Right here is the Triton 2¼ horsepower plunge router. This is a plunge router, which means it can move up and down for different heights. It's a handheld router and can be used handheld, or it can be flipped over and mounted into a router table. And it has the capability to be adjusted from above that router table using a crank handle. So let's go ahead and open the box and check out what's inside. Everything inside the box comes packed in some sturdy styrofoam inserts. Everything's got its place, is well packaged. It all comes wrapped in plastic, which I've removed here. Each of the parts is wrapped in plastic. So we have the router itself here, both 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch collets. It even comes with a small straight router bit, wrench for removing router bits, crank handle, and we'll get to that operation, and then an extended base and fence that can ride on this extended base, and of course the owner's manual. There are actually 4 ways to change the depth of cut on this plunge router. The first is this button right here, and this is sort of macro adjustments all the way up and down. You can press it in and quickly and easily slide the router all the way up and down. Now it's not going to stop maybe exactly where you leave it. Once you let go of this, it moves a little bit and engages, it clicks in. So see if you can hear that. I'll let go here, and there, it moved up a little bit and clicked in. So that's for your macro adjustment. To get a little bit finer, you can pull in on this ring right here and turn the knob left and right. So you pull in the ring, and now you can turn the whole knob and raise and lower by turning. Again, you get close, and it's going to click in really close to where you leave it, but maybe not exactly. There it goes, clicks in, and it raised up slightly. So I'll turn it down, and it clicks in, and it raised up slightly. Finally, there's a micro adjuster, which is right here on top, and this is where you can really dial it in. You simply turn this knob, and the whole router slowly moves up and down, and that's where you can dial in exactly where you want your cut to end up. And of course, there's a locking lever right here. When you've got it where you want, go ahead and lock that down before you make your cut. The 4th method of adjustment is used at the router table using the crank handle. So we'll review that once we get to the router table. You can also put this router in a free plunge mode by clicking in the button here, and it'll stay in, and now you can just move it up and down, and it'll go all the way up and down, no problem. And when you've got it to where you want, go ahead and click this button back in to release it, and now it'll lock in at that position. Changing bits on this router is super easy, and it's got some pretty cool features. You first go ahead and plunge it all the way down. You put it in free plunge mode, click that all the way in. Oops. There it goes. And go all the way down, and then take it out of free plunge so it's locked in there. Now when it's locked all the way down like that, the power button can no longer be engaged. There's a safety in front of it, and you can't move the safety out of the way, and that's pretty cool. The other cool thing is when we turn it over, the spindle is now locked automatically. So there's no other spindle lock to hold. All you have to do is get your wrench in, undo this router bit, change your router bit, and then go ahead and tighten up the new one, and there's no spindle lock to hold or second wrench to use. When you're done your router bit change, simply turn it back over. Go ahead and set it to the depth that you're looking for. And now the power button switch safety can be moved out of the way, and of course your router bit can now spin. The spindle lock is no longer engaged. This router does come with a second collet. This is a 1/2 inch collet, and you can change that easily by just same way that you change the router bits. Take off that collet and thread on the reducing collet, which handles 1/4 inch shanks. This router is also variable speed. There's a dial here at the top, which goes from a 1 setting there all the way up to a 5 setting, and that is from 8,000 to 20,000 RPMs. The Triton router is equipped with a dust collection port right here built into the base, and that accepts 1.5 inch outside diameter hoses, and those come with a Triton dust collector. I happen to have the Festool 27mm hose, and it does slip right in there. There are some threads in there that you can left-hand thread Triton hoses, but this 27mm slips right in there and has a nice friction fit. The router, of course, also has a depth stop gauge and turret, and it's got some nice relative markings here for a scale. So what you can do is, say I want to make a 1/2 inch deep cut, I can go ahead and move this thumb wheel down to about 1/2 inch. Then I would put my cutter into the router, and I would set a 0 reference, and I would do that by just raising and lowering the whole router until my cutter is just hitting, say, this work surface that the base is resting on. And then I would go ahead and put the rod down, and there it goes, based on that 0 reference. Then I can go ahead and spin the turret over to my 1/2 inch and lower the router until it just hits that thumb wheel. And now, of course, I've gone down 1/2 inch, ready to make that cut. The depth rod on this router is spring-loaded and has a recessed area for the screw, so it references off the thumb wheel. So when I go ahead and release the lever here, it shoots down and references off of the thumb wheel. And then I can lock it back in place. To retract it, unlock, lift it up, and lock the lever back in place. The extended base is a really handy accessory for giving a larger work surface for referencing the router. To attach it, you simply first loosen these locking knobs on both sides, and they're spring-loaded and attached to a bolt here. And those 2 bolts go through the base and slip on both sides, push down, slips on, and then just lock those knobs back down from the top. Now that base is in place, it's easy to hold down one side on your work surface, use the handle on the other side of the router to support it, and now you've got a great bearing surface for keeping your router level to your work surface. This fence can also be attached to this extended base. It's simply these 2 rails have big knobs here. Loosen those knobs and slide those over the extended base. Put it at the depth you want, and then lock the knobs down. On this side of the extended base, you can do some trenches referenced off of your edge in from the workpiece, or you can put the fence on the other side over here to have a nice fence when you're working really near to the edge of your workpiece. Also on the extended base is a little piece here that you can use for making circles. Simply undo this wing nut here, and there's a washer, and this slides out. And this little piece here has a couple of holes in it, one really small, one a little bit bigger, and you'd bang a nail or bolt right where you want to center your circle, and you would slip that little hole right over that nail or bolt, and then you would put your router back on top of this piece here, with the extended base back on top, and it's now your nail sticking up right here, and you slip the whole router plus extended base on top of this little plastic piece, and put your wing nut back on, of course. Thread that on. And then set your router to the radius of the circle that you want, and tighten that wing nut down. And now your router will rotate around that nail or bolt, and you can make a perfect circle. Now let's go ahead and flip this plunge router upside down and mount it into a router table. The first thing we want to do is remove a spring that's right inside of here. Now this spring helps counteract the weight of the motor when you're using it in handheld position, so it's easier to move the whole unit up and down. But when we flip the unit over, we don't want that spring counteracting the weight of the motor. The weight of the motor is now hanging from the table, and so we don't want that spring in there. So what we do is first take this screw and undo it a couple of turns just to loosen it up above this little locking area. Then pushing down on top of this cap, undo the cap, and you see it comes up, and there's the spring. And we're just going to take that spring out and then go ahead and put the cap back on and tighten that screw back down. Now I'm going to remove this sub base here that's attached with these 4 screws so I can reuse those screw holes in my router table base here. I also need to take off these little screws with the knobs that we use for attaching the extended sub base. Now with that sub base removed, I can line up my mounting plate over those same screw holes and attach it with the screws. Now that the mounting plate is attached to the router, there's one more step I need to do. This crank handle is used for making depth of cut adjustments from the top of the table. And I need to make a hole here in my plate to allow this crank handle to go through from above. So to find where to make that hole, just flip the router over, and there's a little scallop section that you can see right in here. And that is where the hole needs to be. So simply mark where that is. And we're going to make approximately 1/2 inch diameter cut through the mounting plate. I've now drilled the hole for the crank, mounted the router to the mounting plate, and put it back into the router table. Now it's really easy to lower or raise the router bit, the router itself, and the router bit. And for making changes, super easy. Raise it all the way up until this clicks. It's in the upper raised position, and here easy access to the collet from above the table. The spindle lock is locked, so you just undo it with one wrench and unlock it from the bit, and there you go. You can take your bit out, get your new bit in, simply rotate it down and lock it down with the wrench. Here's a close-up of the router mounted in the router table and just how high that collet comes when you raise it for making your bit changes. It comes all the way above the table. So that is the TRITON 2¼ horsepower plunge router. This router is a great handheld plunge router and is also very suitable for using in a router table since it has that crank handle operation. You can change the bit height and change bits easily from above the table. It is 2¼ horsepower, so it definitely has quite a lot of power for doing handheld operations without being too large for using in the handheld as a handheld plunge router. What I really like about this router is the start-stop safety mechanism and the ease of plunging and the micro adjusting for that plunge was great. Also, for changing bits, just plunging it all the way down and having the spindle lock automatically just using one wrench, that's an awesome feature. So this TRITON router is definitely something I would recommend checking out for the shop, especially if you're looking for a router that can do both handheld and quickly and easily go into a router table.